friends, it's Belinda and I'm so happy to be here sharing a new video with you today. This is a bit of a soft creative reset. I've been away from YouTube for a while, but behind the scenes I've still been making, and I've been dreaming and reflecting on how I want to show up, both here and within the scrapbooking and memory keeping community. You'll start to notice a gentle shift in my content over the coming months. There'll be more heart, more storytelling, more real life context, particularly as I navigate and share what creativity and well-being look like for me as a neurodivergent person. But before that, I wanted to take a moment to celebrate what I have created over the last 12 months. I've had this stack of layouts in my completed box for quite a while now, but before I put them away, I thought, let's do a little flip through together. So I want to say thank you so much for being here with me. I hope that you enjoy this look back at the layouts that I've created over the last 12 months. Now let's jump in. I had actually thought that this was the total amount of layouts that I created in 2024, but I actually have shortchanged myself. This is what I created in the second half of 2024. So from July through to, I think, early this year. I was on the Confessions of a Paper Addict design team for the first half of the year. I've got a few of the last 3 layouts in this little stack here. But I had to take a step back from that commitment and really haven't had as much time for creating as I would like over the last 12 months or so, but I am really hoping to change that and to get back into creating and documenting more regularly and hopefully sharing some stuff when I have the capacity to do that. So let's get straight into these. So most of these layouts here are just from a couple of collections. Like a lot of people, I've got a huge amount of hoarded stash. I've got a lot of Hip Kit Club kits that I've collected over a few years. I've also got a lot of Felicity Jane kits, which I was subscribed to for a few years, and I'm very sad to see them closed down, but let's see what I've created. So these first layouts were created with a Hip Kit Club kit. I think it was from March either 2023 or 2024. It was a kit that came with papers from Hip Kit Club, but they had an issue with their embellishments. So the embellishments came from Simple Stories and I think also Pink Fresh Studio. I wanted to dive into using this kit because it just, although I loved the products, I knew it was something that I was going to struggle to use. So I sat down and pulled out a whole bunch of photos and just tried to work with as many products from the kit as I could to use up as much of it as I could until I was ready to pass it on. So this is one of the first layouts that I created. I actually had these photos printed and a rough design idea for quite a number of years and figured why not use this kit. So this is just some photos from the night before, or the night that I went in to be induced with my daughter in 2015, and it's just telling a little story about how that felt at that time. Like I said, I love the vintage, I love the florals of the Simple Stories. I think it's a Simple Vintage in Bloom was the name of the collection, but I don't know why. I just really struggled to use them on the layout. I think it may be because I'm leaning towards more of a sort of clean design aesthetic these days. I'm not sure, but I am really happy with how that turned out. I think I also went and purchased a few more little embellishment pieces from that Simple Stories collection just to round out what I had with the papers, so I didn't end up in a situation where I had lots of paper and no usable embellishments left. So that was the first layout from that kit. This layout is very, very different, really minimal on the embellishments. I've got a little folder with a whole bunch of cut files that I have pre-cut in just a white cardstock, and I want to also try and use up some of those. So this background is one that I have had cut out for a while. I can't recall where it came from now, but if you see any cut files or any products in this flip through that you want to know where I got them from, please leave me a comment and I will go and search for them. I just wasn't going to go and search for everything before I created this video. So yeah, very simple in terms of embellishments on this one, and that's just because for me this is a really, really busy background. I am usually one that prefers a white background with my stuff sort of centered into the middle. Having said that, I really like this. It's a bit of a departure from my usual style, but I love it. I think because it's a really beautiful pastel color, but you can see that between the two, it's quite a different feel, quite a different aesthetic. And I really do like that about the hip kits that I have collected, is that within the same kit, you can get some really different looking layouts coming out of them. So I've also broken into some of my stash here. These are some thickers that I've had for a very long time. This is a stamp and die set from the stamp market, I think, which I love to use. And of course, my little strip journaling there. The little ampersand, of course, I've got so many sets of thickers, but I couldn't find an ampersand that I was happy with for this particular title. So this is just die cut from one of my alphabet dies, and I've layered it up with a few pieces of cardstock just to make it nice and thick there. Again, this is from that same hip kit, another totally different vibe, totally different feeling to it. This one is much brighter, a bit more my style, and I sort of went back and had a look at some older layouts to have a look at some techniques that I used to use and see if I could bring them back in. So this little technique here with the torn paper pieces around the border, that's something that I used to do a lot, and I had really completely forgotten about it. So I brought that back in, and I love the added bit of interest that adds, and that sort of distressed look. It adds something to a layout that is otherwise quite clean, quite simple. But this was a butterfly wreath. I'm fairly certain that this butterfly wreath cut file came from the Hip Kit Club. I stitched around, if you hold it up close, hopefully you can see it. I stitched around it a few times to adhere it because they are very, very delicate pieces, those butterflies. I didn't want to gum them up with adhesive, so I just added a few dots of adhesive around the wreath and then stitched just around the center of them, and then just used my fingers to sort of bend up the butterflies a little bit just to give it a little bit more dimension. Same with the butterflies that I've used as embellishments. I've sort of added some foam tape underneath them, but then also used a pencil to bend their wings a little bit just to give it a bit more movement. Just a really beautiful photo of my kids from quite a number of years ago now, and some little journaling about how I felt about that. This one is also from that same hip kit, and now that I am looking at this, I'm remembering that the other set of embellishments that came in that kit was a Pink Fresh Studio chrysanthemum, I think. So for this one, I actually have I've got a lot of the Pink Fresh Studio coordinating stamp, stencil and die kits. So I grabbed one of those. This may be the chrysanthemum mum, or it may be another one. Now that I'm looking at it, I think it's a different one. Created my own floral embellishments there using one of those Pink Fresh coordinating kits. Used some colors that coordinated with the papers that were in the Hip Kit. And then this design is actually a scrap lift of myself. It's one that I've done quite a few times, and I really, really like it. I love all of the different layers. I love that it's simple, but there is a lot of interest. So I'll just hold that up there. You can see the first layer is just a mixed media, just a watercolor background. The second layer is some texture paste there. Then I've got some splatters, which I've chosen black for this one. Under here, I've got a paper layer, I've got a border layer, I've got some stitching, I've got another paper layer, and then the photos have each got their own little mat there. So it's a really simple design, but really interesting, and I love it. I will keep using this again and again and again. And yeah, just some funny photos with my little girl. Again, I went into my stack of thickers and found some where the colors in these particular set of thickers coordinated perfectly with the colors that were in the kit. So I think I used those stickers. Yep, there we go. They were on this layout as well. So I ended up adding them to the kit just so that I could remember to use them when I was using that particular kit. Again, this is from the same Hip Kit Club kit. This was one of their cut files. Here it's a big floral heart, and I cut it from a patterned paper. And then I've just backed some of the centers of the flowers with some patterned papers just to add a little bit of extra color around the border. I fussy cut one of the papers to get the florals. So there was a paper that had a blue background and some sort of distressed looking flowers. So that's all I did for embellishing on this one, just some nice floral clusters. I've got my favorite little tissue paper background there. This title was from the Simple Stories collection. And this is a story about a Father's Day event at my daughter's early learning program. But because my husband is FIFO, my dad went with her, so rather than being Happy Father's Day, it was Happy GPAR Day on that particular day. Now we're going to get into some layouts that I created with I think one or maybe two Felicity Jane kits. Now, I have got, I don't know how many Felicity Jane kits still in my stash, a lot of them. I love them. I absolutely adore everything about them. I love the papers. I love the variety of embellishments. I love the whole aesthetic. I love everything. But I struggle to use them. I think because they are quite simple. They don't really lend themselves to a whole lot of layering because there's not a huge range of embellishments in each of the kits. At this particular time, I was also feeling a little bit stuck creatively. So I actually went onto the Felicity Jane website. The website is still there. I went onto the blog and went searching for a few different things. So I went searching for sketches because they always used to share the most amazing sketch challenges. And I grabbed all of the sketches off their website. And then I looked at the kits that I was wanting to work with first and went searching for the design team layouts that were created with those kits, grabbed some shots of those, and then just to make things a little bit easier for myself, to sort of get the creative juices flowing, I did a lot of scrap lifting. So some of it is direct scrap lifting, some of it is inspired by, and then some of them are just using the sketches. Now, I can't recall which is which, but just know that when we're looking through these layouts, there is a good chance that they are layouts that I have picked up from the Felicity Jane design team and just recreated with my own photos and my own stories and, you know, maybe just tweaked a few little details here and there. So the first one is an 8.5 by 11 layout. Oh my gosh, those piggy tails. There is just about nothing cuter than that little sort of fluffy piggy tails on a little girl. I created a little sequin mix here to go into this pocket, and that sequin mix then coordinated with the rest of the kit, so I think I may have used that elsewhere. For this one, it's just a pink pattern paper that I used a stencil and some white texture paste over. Actually, what this was I had already created a background using this stencil and put it into the collection when I had put it away. When I got it out, my style has changed a lot since I first created that background, and I looked at it and I immediately knew that it was really unlikely that I was going to use that background the way that it was. So rather than have it going to waste, I cut out the center of the paper, which had this stencil on it. I've reused the border on another layout, and then I just cut down the paper and used it like this, either as an embellishment piece or as a mat for a photo. So I really love the textural elements here, this ribbon, the twine, the vellum, and then my journaling is printed on vellum, and it's actually adhered to a piece of white cardstock that I stamped on. So I used a background stamp there. I just didn't have a paper in the collection that was going to work well in that spot, so I went and stamped and created my own. I really, really, really love these tabs with the scalloped base. I have searched high and low, up and down. I have searched so hard to find a cut file or a die or something that is going to allow me to recreate those scalloped tabs. But as yet, I have been completely unsuccessful. So if anyone is watching this and they happen to know of somewhere that I can get a die or even a cut file for these scalloped tabs, I would love for you to let me know, because I just really, really wish that I could add this to my stash. This one here, I'm fairly certain that this is a direct scrap lift. This particular kit came with a stamp set and a coordinating die set that I don't have, that was all about tags, creating tags. So I do have a lot of tag dies, stitched tag dies, unstitched tag dies. So when I was sitting down to create with this kit, I just went into my stash and pulled out all of those tag dies and just had them set aside so that I could use them with the kit, because I knew that it was going to work really well with it. I've taken the floral die cut and then just jazzed it up a little bit with some stamped and die cut foliage pieces. One thing that I've really been loving doing when I am doing some stamping with black in particular, it may not show up on camera here, but stamping in black and then just adding some clear embossing powder on them, it just really helps the image to pop. It adds a little bit of shimmer and a little bit of dimension that just gives it, just really elevates that stamping just a little bit more. So I love the clean, simple look here. There's no real journaling. I have got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photos of Violet making just the most adorable little faces. And there's only so many times that I can write about that, but I do want to document them. So it's important for me to be able to create these layouts, but there's just not always going to be something to say. So that's what that one is there. This one as well, I'm fairly certain, is an almost direct scrap lift. So this is from the same kit, but as you can see, very different style, very different aesthetic. I really did love that about the Felicity Jane kits as well. There's, of course, lots of pink and lots of florals, but the black and white, and then there was almost always some pops of green or some pops of blue or something like that. So really, really good for being able to document stories for my daughter and for my son, and also for having things created from the same kit but that don't look the same all the time. So these are just some really gorgeous pictures of my son when he was little. He had a big buff head, and taking his tops off, they always got stuck on his head, and he just had the cutest little faces. So this, I ended up sort of doing it on purpose just because it just killed me with how adorable it was. So I loved this. This is a journal card, and I don't believe this journal card was from this kit. I had to go searching through my stash of journal cards to find something that was going to work well with this particular element. So in the design team layout, or perhaps it was a sketch, there was a journal card, had some sequins in it, and then had some stitched vellum over the top. So I really, really liked the look of that, but I wanted to make sure that the journal card that I had was going to work with the color scheme, work with the layout. So that picture perfect was just ideal there. I've used some dies, some heart dies, just to create some more embellishments. Like I said, the only thing that I struggle with the Felicity Jane kits is that there's just not a lot of die cut embellishments in each of the kits, and I like to have some variety. I've done some layering here. So this is kind of similar to that design that I showed you before, where we've sort of building layers from the bottom up. We've got some green splatters here. I've got a little bit of washi tape sitting under there. This is just some gauze, the kind of gauze that you would get from a pharmacy, and I've cut it and sort of torn it apart. I've got some really nice sort of stitching detail there, and then just that layer across there of the photos. So again, a really simple design that works well when you've got multiple photos on one page. This one again, I'm pretty certain was just about a direct scrap lift. Again, I've gone with the black and whites from that collection. But it also had some mustards. So I've pulled out the mustards and just added it in a few places just to sort of help that monochrome pop a little bit and to keep the eye moving around the page. I used my hexagon, I don't know if I would have used the dies or perhaps punches. I think probably dies, because I don't think I have my punches anymore. They were just taking up too much space. And I just love the movement that it adds down the page. And it really does bring your eye straight into the photo there. A simple design, but really effective. It's an 8.5 by 11. Again, I don't always have journaling to add to photos, sometimes because I can't remember. Sometimes because it's just a photo that I really love. So quite often when I don't have any specific journaling or any specific story for a photo, I will go and I will find a quote that is relevant or a quote that works. Sometimes it's sort of a life lesson from me to my kids. Other times, like this, it's just a little quote that I found about fathers and sons. So for me, that's a nice way of adding something to a page when you don't have a big story to add. And then I think, no, not the last layout. This is the second last layout from that collection. This one here, so I had this cut file cut and backed in the collection kit already. And I actually think this is the cut file that was on that pink patterned paper with the stars stenciled on, but I knew that I wouldn't use it. So off it came, and we've gone on to a nice clean white background, which is much more my style and much more my aesthetic these days. I've got some borders down the side. I've used a scallop border punch here. If you are familiar with Felicity Jane's scalloped edges and scalloped borders is something that was a theme that ran through a lot of their kits. So of course I had to have a scallop punch just to try and replicate that. And for the embellishments here, I've again gone for one of my Pinkfresh Studio coordinating die, stencil and stamp sets. But for this one, hopefully you can see that there, I first stamped in a really light grey, just so that I could get the image, stenciled over with the colours that coordinated with the products that I was using on this page. And then I've gone over it again with a white ink and some white embossing powder. So it adds definition to the flowers, but it's also really soft, really subtle and really pretty, and that little bit of gloss just adds a bit more visual interest there. So a really nice way. I love those Pinkfresh products. That's probably one of the most valuable purchases in my stash, aside from the actual cost of them. They're something that you can just use. I can just use again and again and again. And as someone who really enjoys florals, that's really, really important for me. And I reach for them quite often when I'm stuck for embellishments, particularly with these Felicity Jane kits as I make my way through them, where I know that the embellishments are a little bit light on. Those Pinkfresh coordinating products are going to come in so handy for me to flesh out those kits and actually make use of them. Now this is it's still not the last one. No, still not the last one. This again, I had created this background way back when I got the kit. Was something that I quite often did. I would pull the kits out, start making things, get distracted, put them away, and then not come back to them. So I already had the background. And it was actually really similar to a sketch from Felicity Jane. So it was really similar to a sketch that I had from Felicity Jane. So I thought I would make use of the background. It is a bit busy. It's not my usual style, but I've sort of made that work for me by adding this white piece in the middle, but I didn't want to make it so big that you couldn't see the design of that background. So that's just held my journaling. I typed that up on my computer and printed it out. This is the alphabet, one of the alphabets from Felicity Jane. That's a die cut piece. I've got the pictures covered up there because they are in the bath and they're a little bit older now, and I don't really know how they would feel about everybody seeing photos of them in the bath, as cute as they are. And just built some clusters. This is a little stamp here, a little border stamp. It may have come from Felicity Jane, I'm not sure, but I've just added that in a couple of places. I was really annoyed that I didn't have an ink that was quite the right color, so I just went with close enough is good enough and kind of had to convince myself to leave it there. This twine, I really love the added textural element of having twine on a page, but because of where this particular one was positioned, I knew that I wanted to leave it long, but I knew that if I just left it, it would end up sort of sitting over the journaling. So to combat that, I placed it where I wanted, and then I've just added a couple of little glue dots where the pieces meet, just to help them stay in place. So you can see if I turn that, it's that twine staying in place. And this is actually the last one from that Felicity Jane collection. Again, this is either a direct scrap. I think this is a direct scrap lift. I think this is a scrap lift of Cherie. But I've had to add my own little embellishments and my own bits and pieces here, because I think by the time I got to this one, I was running really short on embellishments from that kit. So I've again used those same die cut florals from Pink Fresh that I created and used some tag dies. This is not vellum. This is actually tissue paper, and this is something that I'm fairly certain that Cherie shared, who was on the Felicity Jane design team. I'm fairly certain this was the technique that she shared at some point. Tissue paper is not as translucent as vellum is. It's obviously just a lot harder to work with. So to do this, I printed out my journaling on my printer, grabbed a much bigger piece of tissue paper, laid it out over the top, and have taped it down and then run it through again. It worked. I wasn't convinced that it would work, but it did work. And to adhere that, I've just added some stitching over the top, and then it's kind of loose here. So it is very delicate, but it's just something different again from my usual vellum, which I really like. Now that I'm looking at this, these Nuvo drops that I've used here, they're very bright. They don't actually go with the color scheme at all now that I'm looking at them. But I think that because I have put them in 3 different places, it almost works. It's not like they're sort of standing out there on their own. I love this ribbon. This is a ribbon that I purchased online, I think from Temu. I've got a big roll of it in white and a big roll of it in pink, and it's just the most perfect ruffled texture. I did use it on another layout that I showed you before. So that was the last one there with that Felicity Jane kit. I think I've pretty much used up everything that I can in that kit. So whatever was left has just gone into the box where I store all of my leftover bits and pieces of Felicity Jane. What I loved about their collections was that they coordinated really well with each other. So I know that anything that I put into that box, when I'm creating with another kit, I can go back into that box and find things that are going to coordinate really well with whatever kit I'm working with. Okay, so these 3 layouts are the last 3 layouts that I created for the Confessions of a Paper Addict design team. I don't know if these process videos went up onto my YouTube channel or not. If they haven't, I will try and go back and edit those and get them uploaded, because it's content that I've created that I've done most of the work for, so I might as well. For this one here, I can't recall if this was already a stitched file. I think it may have been, or if it was a cut file that I've turned into a stitch file. Looking at it here, it's possible that it may have already been a stitch file, I'm not sure, but I do also have a tutorial video on my channel for how to take any cut file and turn it into a stitching template file. So I'll try and link that below if you're interested in seeing that. But for this one, I've added the stars as a border down the bottom, also added some stars in the top corner and some stars here. So I did have to do a little bit of pre-planning to figure out where all of my elements were going to go before I sent this off to my silhouette. I've used some embroidery floss in colours that coordinated with the photo and with the products in the kit, and then just created a couple of clusters of embellishments here on either side of the photo. This here is a die cut from some paper using a metal die. I've got a whole bunch of foliage dies that I like to use just to flesh out some embellishment clusters when I need to. This is the same hip kit as that one before. This was also for Confessions of a Paper Addict. I loved that school cut file, the document for documenting the kids' first day back at school. This was their photos that we took in the morning, and this is the photos in the afternoon. That there really lent itself well to the grid layout and to just help with sort of the design and adding a little bit more. I have stitched down through the middle of those photos, and I've used a variegated thread. I've got a few of those in my stash, and I really love using them where there's enough stitching that you can see the variation in colour across it. So that one, the colours just worked really well with the colours in this collection, so it was perfect for me to use there. This is also the Confessions of a Paper Addict layout. I love this. So the products that I used here were from Uniquely Creative, which, if you're not familiar, is an Australian brand. They make the most beautiful collections. Their paper is incredible. The quality of their paper is just so nice. Really lovely and thick. Lots of beautiful florals in their embellishments. For this one, it's some fussy cut florals that I've used. They do have a lot of fussy cutting. This, I just love the beautiful pastel colors, how soft it is. And I used one of my very last pieces. I don't know if you can see that there. I've got a few pieces of basil cardstock in different textures from when they used to do that. So this is the polka dot one. I've got a couple of pieces of the striped one. I don't have many left. I've only got 1 or 2 pieces of those left, and I really am sad that I can't get them anymore, because for someone who enjoys white backgrounds, it's just really nice to be able to add something that's got a little bit extra to it. And then finishing off here with just 2 year in review layouts. It was not until July last year that I created this layout. So this was our year in 2023. This cut file is from the Cut Shop. I used it first in 2022. Absolutely loved the way it looked, and then have decided that I'm going to create these year in review layouts for a good few years. So for this one, I went with a bit of a softer touch. The cut file is in white. I used mainly products from a crepe paper collection with some these labels here are from a stamp and coordinating die from Elle's Studio. And I think this background paper is a really old Kaisercraft collection, and it came with the most beautiful pink wood grain patterned paper, and I think I bought about 20 sheets of it. So I've got a lot of it. I use it sparingly because I know that once it's gone, I'm unlikely to find anything like that again, but it did work really well with this particular layout. And then this is the year in review for 2024. Quite a different bold choice, but I'm happy with that. I really like the variation in style when particularly using the same design. So just chose a photo from each month, and then for this one I've just die cut some little tags with a tiny little stitch tag die, and then used some embroidery thread around each one for a little bit of extra visual interest, and then used heart and star stickers, which I'm pretty sure are from Elle's Studio because I have a whole stack of those. I absolutely love them. But that's it for now. I have got some more layouts that I've been working on, so yeah, hopefully I'll have some more to share soon. I don't think this video turned out quite as short as I had hoped it would, but hey, it's been a while and I had a lot to say. So I just want to say thank you so much for watching if you are with me, and I hope you have a great day.